main things that would improve things would be a 10 or an 8-foot chain link fence with slats in them. And that would be expensive. However, on the other side, on West Ridge, there's a split rail fence. And I don't know if that was subsidized by the town or not.
Yeah, that was done by the town when we redid that street.
No. And it's nice, and it looks good, but I suggest that's mostly not for Strathmore taxpayers. I see licenses from across Canada there, and Americans, and one from the Yukon, for example. Anyways, if that type of thing could be done on the south side of those businesses, or, and this is facetious perhaps, but I would like to say that people might be prepared to kick in, other than the town, to have higher fences with slats.
So just for clarification, it would be the back fences of these businesses that
I'm
are
talking,
right on Westmount
yeah,
Drive?
I'm talking about
Okay.
the backyards of those
Okay,
places.
gotcha, thanks.
So Strathmore Ford, at least, at most one star. Greg Distributors, they control the weeds better. On the east side of their property, the chain link fence is falling down. Looks horrible. But I'd like to see a fence there, or other people, it's not just me, believe me, a high fence there, the same height as Ford with slats in it. And on the Greg, I think it's the Greg Distributors property, there's also a smaller building that's labeled Big Bear Choppers Dealer. I don't think it's open now, but I think it's on
It's a shop, but they work out of it.
motorcycles?
They maintain motorcycles, yeah.
Okay.
But I've never seen a motorcycle outside.
Anyways, it's pretty good. Next one's for sale. Its rear property is not very good and has graffiti on the back of it.
It was recently sold,
Oh, was it?
so it was the bowling alley, it's now going to be daycare.
Pardon me?
It's going to be daycare now. A daycare
Oh,
was
great,
recently sold,
great,
so hopefully the new people will be able to fix that one up.
great.
Awesome.
The next one is Imperial Dragon Family Restaurant. And that'd be commercial as opposed to industrial. And they got the best weed crop in town. And they have a barbed wire fence behind them. And the weeds don't look bad when there's a lot of them.
That just recently changed hands too.
Oh.
So I'm not sure that they know that, but I can have that discussion with them.
Okay.
Well, I don't know what to do with them. But like I say, Carol and I just walked through recently, and the weeds are about this wide, so it was high, so it was hard to walk through. Looks like low bushes, more or less.
It was cold, so we had to walk down. Trying to get home.
Next one's Fountain Tire, and we're starting to get further between Westbridge and Westmount, as there's more buildings between the two. And at Fountain Tire, for example, there's we know a lady that lives there in a rental sort of high-rise. Is that 3 stories high? Mm-hmm. Anyways, it's a mountain of tires behind Fountain Tire.
Yeah.
And I don't know why how long they keep them, but obviously I think they'd all be used tires. But there's huge tractor tires and everything, and either remove them more frequently or, again, a higher fence. She complains that, and also condo, there's condos as well as a rental unit
Yeah.
there. Next is Wheatland Motel, and as far as I can see, that looks good. as far as we could see. And the last one I'll cover is Strathmore Motor Products. And it's good from what we can see. It's all, like they'd be the only one, maybe 5 stars. And it's their yard's all asphalted and they keep the cars neat and everything. But I would recommend a higher back fence there too for the condo people and that behind them. Okay, that's it for that. And the third item is irrigation on town property here, on Kinsman Lake and Lake Strathmore or Strathmore Lake. And the town can get, quotes, free water from those lakes, which works for irrigation. But they'd have to install, so the cost would be, the majority of the cost would be the installation and ongoing maintenance of that. And they're doing that in, I think it's called Northwood in Strathmore now. And they call those lakes up there, or I think it's North Lake, where they have lakes there and a pickleball court.
All right.
And
So that would be the Lakewood subdivision?
yeah,
Yeah.
and it already looks really good.
Okay.
And they're installing their own sprinkler system,
Yeah.
and as part of kind of a condo thing, and not a condo, an HOA. And the town should be doing the same thing around their property here and Strathmore Lake. And that town around Strathmore Lake was given to the town of Strathmore, but the town did not maintain the infrastructure that actually worked around most, or I guess it would be the south end of the lake. That irrigation worked, but the town didn't maintain it, and particularly blowing out the lines to winterize them. And so none of that works anymore. And the town's growing a great crop of foxtails, which are harmful to pets. And the grass around there is hard to maintain. Trees are dying. And you pay to plant, or taxpayers pay to plant those trees, and then they die. A significant percentage of them die. And they put green bags around them and that, but that certainly doesn't work for all of them. And the green bags aren't particularly attractive. Kinsman here, the trees are staying alive, but you grow a crispy brown lawn out front here if it's a dry summer. And you could also have a sprinkler system there. And thank you for giving me the time to mention this.
Thank you. I think we might be able to deal with a couple of them quickly, but I think some of them will also go on to our enforcement team, and they can look into this. So if I can deal with the backyards of all the businesses, Mark, I'm wondering if it could simply just start with perhaps a letter to the various businesses. Is that something we might do as far as reminding them that the backyards are also important to residents?
I think the town's raised that before.
Okay, we can check with Mark and see if that's one process we could start with.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we'll definitely be following up with our municipal enforcement team regarding the properties that you have mentioned, especially those with high weeds and things like that, and see what sort of action we can take depending on our existing bylaws and things that we can follow up with on.
How about a higher fence?
I'll have to review what the bylaw does speak to in terms of the size of the fencing. I don't believe there are a lot of restrictions in terms of that, but I'll have to double check that and I'll get back to council.
And then we have to also be careful because various business owners, that's their property. So I don't know if we can just say you have to have a bigger fence, because they own that property, they own that land. And if they've got the fence according to the bylaw size, I don't believe the town can step in and make them put in a bigger fence. That would be a little problematic. Now, as far as Westmount Drive and that hidden driveway, I've driven that a lot. I've seen people go fast on that. It's something we can leave again with Mark as far as what things we might possibly do with enforcement, things that might slow speed, different things like that.
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship. We'll speak with the infrastructure department and determine what's there for signage and things like that. We'll do regular enforcement of those things for speeding, as you indicated, and we'll see if we can help curtail behavior through education, enforcement, as well as some signage.
Good, thank you. Now, as far as Strathmore Lake and the trees and grass, I've walked it a lot. I've run into you folks with your past dog and everything. So yeah, I've seen that area, and I know the trees. We now have our head of operations is an arborist now, so she has great knowledge as far as trees, and she has done soil samples. So in the last few years, they've been making real efforts to replace dead or dying trees with trees that can handle that soil, because there's a lot of sand, I believe, in that soil. As far as irrigation for that, I think we might have to talk with Alberta Health, because if people are lying on the grass, that lake is basically a stormwater pond, so it could have various chemicals and salts from the roads that flow into it, and that's the same with Kinsman. Kinsman isn't really a lake, it's a stormwater pond, so it might be problematic with Alberta Health Services as far as us irrigating with water from a stormwater pond. Now, the difference between that and Lakewood, I believe Lakewood is creating a lake that will have some water from WID Canal, which is treated to a much higher level than the stormwater ponds in our town. So that's why you might be able to see them watering on their lake, on their subdivision parks, like Brave Park. They might be able to water from there because it's got a source of WID water coming to the canal. So that could be the difference between those. We can check into what Alberta Health says as far as irrigating with stormwater, but I think it could be a problem as far as people coming in contact with it, as well as pets. You know, pets' paws could come in contact with irrigated water from a stormwater pond. And, you know, I'm not saying this would absolutely happen, but if dogs' paws were suddenly burned because there's some chemicals coming from the stormwater pond of Strathmore Lake, that could be a problem for us as a town. But it's something that we can look into, we can ask around as far as Alberta Health. But I can tell you that, I picked up my microphone cord there. I can tell you that we now have, as head of operations, she's an arborist as well, so they are being really, really careful and planting trees that can do well in that area. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. So we can move on to the budget, and then I think, Mark, will your department contact them, or as far as Westmount Drive and the back fences, just that you've reached out?
Yes, Your Worship. I think through various departments, whether it's the infrastructure or parks or municipal enforcement, someone will be in touch with you as long as we have your contact information.
Councillor Peterson? Okay, you have a...
I'm on the board of Diamond Shore Condos, and so you could reply to me. Our condo president is Arne Johansson. But if you reply to me, that would be great. I can give you my contact information.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson?
I just wanted to say, relevant to your about the speed limit on that particular site, it is definitely problematic in terms of sight lines. It's really problematic. And the reason I know this is that I am working with 4 grandchildren who are working on their driver's license, and their parents refuse to drive with them. So I do. But one of the other things that I've really noticed lately, and I know that our director has as well, is as our town is growing and our youth population is growing and our senior population is growing, there is an increasing level of concern around traffic safety generally and speed limits in the town. And there's been lots of talk about, and it's not the first time it's come up, about changing our school zones into playground zones 24 hours a day. And I think this is part of that. And I know that driving with those kids on a regular basis, you know, a 50-kilometer zone in a residential area, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. And so I see City of Calgary has changed it in their suburbs. And so I'm sure that it is something that our department will look at going forward. And I appreciate you bringing that particular one up because it feels very unsafe.
Probably many areas in addition to West Vaughan, right?
Yeah, yeah. But thank you for all of your concerns. Very well presented.
Thank you. Our first online question is concerning the budget, and it's what is the town doing to reduce costs? So I can tell you that the 2025 budget is proposing a decrease in overall operating costs compared to the prior year. We're looking at reducing from 36.2 million in 2024 down to 35.98 million in 2025. Staff performed a very detailed review of operating expenditure trends to find areas for efficiencies and cost savings in order to provide the same level of services to residents with reduced operating costs. And the town is also looking into grant opportunities, such as the NRED grant, to support upcoming programs and projects. What I'd like to say to the public who watch this in recording or to the public who are here, our financial team and our CAO and his senior leadership team have been working for weeks and weeks on the budget. So when it's time for the council to get together and join them in budget meetings, which will be later this month, I think they start next week, a bulk of the heavy lifting has been done. And we come in to possibly make some suggestions or to work with them to finalize the budget. But we've done a great deal to try to reduce our operating costs. They've worked so hard to try to find areas where they could make cuts that would reduce any kind of a property tax increase. The other thing I can tell you is that we recently, as of January this year, we joined the Mid-Sized Cities Mayor's Caucus. And that is for towns and cities of 15,000 population or over. And every municipality in that group is struggling and trying hard to keep their tax rates as low as possible. What we've decided as a group of towns and cities is to release all the property tax rate increases for all of the cities and towns in that caucus, so that everyone can see where Strathmore sits and how we've also been trying to reduce our tax rate. So we're working very hard. I think you get it when you see that. Hopefully you'll see that Strathmore is right in with everyone as far as keeping tax rates. Some will be higher than us, some might be around the same, but every municipality is struggling. We've had supply chain issues, we've had inflation. Municipalities are like any other business. We're hit with inflation rates, and if inflation rates are higher, then obviously our cost of gas and diesel for our equipment to get parts from the U.S., if there's a tariff coming from the U.S. this year, that's going to impact us as far as getting parts and the cost of parts. So we're working really hard to get the tax rate to as manageable a number as possible, and to be competitive, and to also be predictable. We'd like our residents to know that we're trying to stay in a certain range. But it's very difficult, and it's very problematic for a town to do a 0% tax increase, because then you're not keeping up with inflation. It's like, we've heard this expression before, CAO Scoble has used it, you're kicking the can down the road. If you do zeros, at some point you have to play catch up, because inflation isn't going to zero. It keeps getting bigger. We try to be as reasonable as we can. So that's that question on the budget. As far as taxes, yes, sir, Donathan.
Thank you, Your Worship Council. Just a quick update. We did get our live stream up and running.
Oh, good. Oh, good. So if you're at home now, welcome to this morning's Coffee with Council. We are live streaming. The second question has to do with taxes, and the question is, why are my taxes high and climbing? I think I've touched on that a bit. The inflation rate impacts us like any other business. We try to keep our tax rate as manageable as possible. And I've said this before, all of us sitting at the table here, we live in town. So when we come up with as low a tax rate as we can, we have to pay that tax rate increase too. So I'm not invulnerable. I'm not able to avoid that. I have to pay the same property tax rate on my property. So the 2025 budget has been built to support the 6 strategic priorities that are in our strategic plan. Each council has to come up with a strategic plan for the years that they have as a term. And so our budget works closely with that, trying to find ways to meet the goals of that strategic plan. And a particular emphasis has been placed on financial sustainability in our strategic plan in the last 3 years. And that's because we want to have predictable tax rates and also manageable, and also that our user fees for our various recreation facilities are also manageable. But as I've said, you do have to have some increases because inflation doesn't wait for anybody. It carries on. But we want to try to keep it manageable and as low as possible. What we also want to do is try to build up our financial reserves. Strathmore is a community that this council has worked really hard trying to ensure that we can build up our savings, build up our reserves, so that if we have major projects, we have the funds that can help accomplish those projects. And our reserves had gotten to a state where we really felt we needed to increase them. So if we have money in our budget, then we try to allocate it towards our reserves so that we can build up things for infrastructure below ground, our recreation facilities, our overall sustainability grants, so that if a project comes up suddenly, if you have a water line break, you have money in that reserve that you can do major repairs. So that's what we've really worked hard at, is to build up our reserves. We've also worked really hard to lower the town's overall debt. And I believe right now we're at our lowest that I've seen in a long time. Liana, do you remember what our ratio to what we're allowed to borrow is currently? It's 21 or 22?
I believe you're correct. I believe we're sitting about 22 right now.
Which is incredibly low. Like the province allows you to borrow a certain amount of money, a certain percentage of that amount you're allowed to borrow. And we are sitting at about 22% of what we're allowed to borrow. When I came on council in 2010, it was about 65, 66%, 68%. But the reason for that is the council before had just done the water line from Calgary, and that took a great deal of money. So, there were things that had to be done to ensure our water supply, and I know people were upset this summer because that water supply was obviously impacted by Calgary. But we think they've done a great job now in figuring out where the problems are. But yeah, as far as our overall debt, we've lowered it a great deal. So that means less of taxpayer money is going to pay down the interest of debt from the past. So we've really lowered it. We're in a stronger financial position. We have more money being put into reserves, and we're trying to keep our property tax rate as reasonable as possible. Yeah, I think I've coming. The last thing I could say is that we've got an investment-focused budget that we're trying to reduce the overall financing. I touched on that. We're also proposing an additional $160,000 to establish a repair, maintain, and replace program, and that will protect our long-term assets, and it'll be a really good part of our management strategy. So from a town financial point of view, going into 2025, we're on far more solid ground than we've ever been. We've reduced the overall debt ratio to 22%. Less money is being paid out to service the debt and pay interest. We've increased the amount into our reserves, and we're trying to keep the property tax rate as low as we can, considering things like inflation and supply chain issues and the price of parts and things. So that is what I would like to say to that. And we move down to item 3. I've been talking a lot, so I thought I would turn to Denise Peterson to just talk about traffic light synchronization. And if you don't mind, I'll get a cup of coffee.
You bet. So the traffic light synchronization needs to be looked at, says the communication we've had, especially southbound Wheatland Trail. There are 2 sets to get across the highway and travel south on the 817, and these are out of sync. So the town has no control over the traffic signals on Highway 1 and Highway 817, as these are the responsibility of Alberta Transportation and Economic Corridors. The main factor impacting this specific set of lights is traffic priority, and Highway 1 has traffic priority over all other highways and intersections, meaning that the east-west travel is given the highest priority and the longest duration of green light time. While Highway 817 is given a high priority as well, it is still second to Highway 1 and in a conflicting north-south direction. This means traffic synchronization is nearly impossible. If the signals at Ridge Road and Highway 817 were to match those of Highway 1 and 817, they would be primarily red in the north-south direction, which is the opposite of the priority movement. So, bottom line, at this point in time, the highways are under the jurisdiction of the province until such a time as Strathmore becomes a city. And if we do become a city, that will become our big headache, but it isn't right now, and it is not. Good timing.
Good time. Better get my mic on.
Recreation.
Sure.
I'm sorry, you have a question? Go ahead. So that is something that we have discussed, and I think that there are advantages and disadvantages. Councillor Mitzner might want to speak to that.
In the first term, we did investigate it. There's not a lot of cities within Alberta right now. And the 817 runs right through the center of our town. So it's something we're going to revisit and see what the benefits are and what the non-stoppers are.
Yeah. Okay. That's understandable. I just, in my opinion, it's better to be a smaller town.
Yeah. The benefits, I think, are in your policing, some of the big ticket items, but do we want to go that big that fast?
We wouldn't want to become Calgary.
No.
Or Airdrie.
And I think,
I don't know Airdrie very well.
and I think Councillor Peterson made some good points. If we do have to take financial responsibility for Highway 817, I'm not sure, does number 1 also factor into that? To an extent?
Just
A little, maybe?
certain things that border us.
Okay. So for example, if we decided that next year, and I'm not saying we are doing this for those at home, if we decided to pursue city status, we would need to find out what state the Highway 817 is in, because it would be turned over to us. So we would probably be trying to talk with the province to make sure that when we take it over, it's not in a situation where we have to do major repairs as soon as we become a city, because we have to maintain it all the way through our town limits, and that adds costs for sure. So we want to be careful. There's some good things towards it, towards becoming a city, and there could be some hiccups too. But we're going to be looking into all factors as far as that goes. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. Our next questions relate to culture and recreation and community. And I want to recognize Director Pretzloff, who has, this is under his jurisdiction through the leadership team, and he's done a remarkable job for us. And I'll go into that a little bit later. And the first question in this section is, where is the Culture and Performance Center in town? And the answer to that is there isn't one. But the subsidiary answer to that is that there are multiple ones. So in Strathmore, we have the Strathmore Theatre Players, and we have 2 other groups that are very, very active that are both youth-oriented theatre groups. And right now, we have phenomenal capacity within the community through the school system. So we've been able to accommodate to some degree through the Strathmore Theatre Players and through at Strathmore High School, and then Brentwood School does some pretty amazing theatre performance, as does Westmount School. Westmount School also has a public group that are working there, and Holy Cross Collegiate is just undergoing a renovation, which I think has capacity to increase their opportunity for performance centers, but the town does not have one at this time. The second question was, how did the Culture and Performance Center void become recognized and acted upon by Strathmore Stampede or Strathmore Agricultural Society before the municipality recognized it? And certainly the context of that question is that that the Western Events Center through the Strathmore Ag Society is looking at a performance center, looking to see whether that's a viable portion of their process going forward. But the town certainly has recognized it, and Director Presloff, jump in if I'm in error in this, but in 2019, the town had undertaken a needs assessment, and we did a recreation assessment, we're in the process of doing that. And we became aware that culture and recreation was in that top 7, in the 6-7 area in that assessment. And very definitely the town did what they could to support those various areas. And I'll give some examples in a moment. But then COVID hit, and it took other things took much greater priority. Today, Director Presloff and the town has undertaken hiring a consulting firm, RC Strategies, to conduct a very, very in-depth recreation and cultural needs assessment that will inform us well into the future and allow us to look at, through that needs assessment, where the gaps are, and to start working on a long-term strategy to fill those gaps. And I want to say that the town gets numerous requests from local organizations requesting an increase to services or new facilities, and the results of this needs assessment will help us to look into that too. Some of the things that the town has done is that they have provided funding in terms of culture, in upping the game, if you like. The Wheatland Society of Arts has a focus in the downtown area on 3rd, and they have expanded their book of business significantly, and they are supported by the town. They wouldn't be able to do what they could without the support of taxpayers. So they run extensive programs very much focused on the broadest possible concept. Art for All is their logo, and so they provide subsidized programs for people that can't afford it. That's where the town's support comes in, and then the town supports them in all kinds of fundraising efforts as well. So that is one area where the culture area has really helped. So within the next few weeks, our consulting team is meeting with a handful of recreation and cultural organizations in town to gain insights, and the meetings will be hosted with both the local recreation community as well as the arts and culture community. And I want to say that Strathmore has been a community that has dug very, very deep to support recreation and arts and culture. I think about 25% of our total budget is focused on providing this high quality of life that we currently enjoy, and certainly not to the specification or desires of all people, but they will do this consultation as the last step in their engagement process, and then they will complete the results of the needs assessment. And I'm looking really forward to seeing that coming forward to the community in January of this coming year. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson.
There's
Question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we take advantage of the programs that you're saying, such as line dancing.
Yeah.
And we go to the library a lot, and, those things are integral.
And thank you for bringing that
in my
up, because I
opinion.
missed the library in this list of groups that really do support the performing arts and cultural aspect in our community. Thank you. I overlooked that, and they're a big part of it.
Yeah, we love line dancing.
Thank you.
The next online question, or a question that was submitted earlier, is to do with stormwater and wastewater. Strathmore currently charges the same storm wastewater flat fees to residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional customers. The current flat fee that is charged to each wastewater customer does not account for the impact of impervious services on the stormwater system and does not provide a means to recognize property owners' reductions of their burden on the system. Many municipalities, and I'm not sure which municipalities do this because there's nothing mentioned here, but it says many municipalities have begun charging based on per parcel impervious area. By doing so, they have eased the burden on residential customers, generated more revenue, and incentivized the adoption of sustainable land use practices. Will the town ever consider building upon their current rate structure by adding in a more equitable recovery of revenue based on impervious area of its customers? And the town of Strathmore is committed to ensuring that our utility rates are fair and equitable. We recognize that the current flat fee structure does not account for the varying levels of impervious services across different property types, which can influence the burden on our stormwater system. While we are aware that some municipalities have implemented fee structures based on the impervious area of each parcel, we have also significant concerns about the cost of implementing and enforcing such a change. The transition to a new fee structure, for example, would require substantial research and investment in both technology and administrative resources, which is a considerable challenge for a town of our size. Currently, we do not foresee, I don't know why I yelled there, currently we do not foresee making changes to our current rate structure in the near future. However, we are still committed to exploring all options to ensure our utility rates are as fair and sustainable as possible. We will continue to watch for best practices and advancements in this area, and will keep our community informed of any potential changes. Thank you for your understanding and continued support as we strive to manage our resources effectively for the benefit of all Strathmore residents and businesses. And Jamie, I'll just ask you an easy question. Do we know of the municipalities that might be trying this approach? Are they larger than us?
I don't know which ones specifically. I would guess that they are larger, but I don't know any which ones specifically right now. But we can look into it.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will move on to number 6, recreational amenities, and I will turn to Councillor Montgomery, and he'll be doing recreational amenities as well as funding requests for various groups.
Thank you. So the question regarding recreation amenities is, what is the town doing to make recreation facilities more family friendly? A lot of my tax money is going towards these facilities and my family and friends don't use them. For example, the pool is rarely open for public swimming, and when it is, it's not at times when families can attend. Also, why is the pool so cold? My children don't even want to swim here because they don't like how cold the water is. So the information from administration is as follows. Regarding pool programming, the town balances a variety of users' needs, such as lessons, school board lessons, fitness classes, lane swim, private rentals, and public swim. There are many requests for the facility, and all these requests are considered when determining the pool schedule. As for pool temperatures, competitive swimmers, like our local swim club, prefer colder temperatures, as it allows for improved performance. Conversely, leisure swimmers and families prefer warmer temperatures. The town takes into consideration all users when determining pool temperatures and balances the competing needs. The current pool temperatures are, the lap pool is 28 degrees, the kiddie pool is 33 degrees, and the hot tub is 38 degrees. Now, this is actually something that is something I've brought up before twice now, once last term and once this term. The pool is absolutely too cold. I've heard that from dozens of people. I know that there are hundreds of people out there who are not using our pool because of the temperature. And while it is important that we try to take into consideration the desires of different groups, I think it kind of behooves us, as far as being respectful of tax dollars, I think it behooves us to try to make sure we're maximizing the revenues that we get, which means generally that means increasing the number of users, or trying to maximize the number of users that use the facility. I've traveled around to a lot of different pools around southern Alberta, partly actually because of our pool temperature. I totally agree, it's actually too cold. I've seen kids with blue lips, in lessons, shivering. I've heard from people, I go to the pool and I'll sit in the steam room and I'll hear people saying, why is the pool so cold? I will bring this forward again for council to review. And yeah, so it's good questions. As far as like for the programming of the pool, that is a bit trickier. One of the issues is that the more the pool is open, obviously, the more it has to be staffed, and so that does cause an increase in the cost to the town. Will that be balanced by increased revenues of increased users? Potentially. It's one of these things where, we almost have to, try it and kind of see where it goes. If people are expecting the pool to be closed, they're not even going to try to go to the pool. As more people use the pool, then it can be open more. Just this weekend, I went all the way to Airdrie to use their pool, and it was very busy. There was a lot of activities going on there. And so it is something that I think is important. And something that's important to me, and I know that's important to this council as well, is making the most of what we have now. And so, that we've been looking at all of our various amenities, all of our various programs, all of our various utilities to try to figure out how can we maximize not just the revenue, because it's easy to kind of crank up, fees, but we've also been looking at ways to maximize, value for our residents. And so I will bring this forward again. And I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we move on, I did do some Googling. We got this agenda emailed to us, I believe. Anyway, I was just looking at different pool temperature ranges, and I checked 3 different little sites, and it talks about how the safe range for lap swimming is between 25 and 28 degrees Celsius. So we're at the upper end of the temperature for lap pools. I don't know what a difference it would make to go up to 29 as far as the safety. I know we have the swim team practicing at the pool, as well as the Palominos. Are they the Palominos, the water polo teams? So I'm not sure what an impact that would be if we raised the temperature as far as the safety and as far as the ability to host competitions. So that's something that we would have to consider as well. So we are within the range as far as the lap pool goes. But I agree with Councillor Montgomery. We're always looking for ways to improve the usage of the pool and have more good options available for our residents.
Your worship, if I can step in?
Yep.
So one of my grandsons is swimming at the Foothills now, Foothills Club, and we had to, well, we didn't have, but I did because I take him, attend a session there. Their pool is 25.3 degrees in their lap pool, and they gave a really good presentation talking about why they keep it at that level, and that is at the low end. Like ours is at 28, but they said that the American Red Cross and the Mayo Clinic both recommend between 25 and 28 degrees for lap pools. And that it's pretty common to keep it at that temperature. But we have a
Question at the back?
It's actually Alberta Services
that dictates it here. Yeah, I understand that's what we're yeah.
we can't go past 29.
Yes, and I was getting there, but thank you. That's a really good clarification. And one of the things that they talked to us about people doing fitness in those pools, that the balance is trying to have the kiddie pools and the hot tubs at temperatures that can accommodate, or that people can warm up easier. But when I heard the conditions that happen when people are sweating when they're doing fitness, even at relatively low levels, that it causes dizziness and dehydration and nausea, and then they also went into the concerns around health concerns in terms of bringing that temperature above 29 degrees what happens in terms of the biological conditions in the pools was unpleasant to think about. So it was a really good education and something I think that those kinds of things would be helpful for us to know, as a council going forward. It was certainly a good education for me. And, I know that the Mayo Clinic talks about seniors and children benefiting from higher levels of temperature. Seniors that aren't like me, I'm like a North Sea whale, the temperatures are going to matter. But I think that, as Mayor said, we can come to a more fullness of understanding going forward to be able to accommodate.
Being an absolute non-swimmer and being petrified if my feet can't touch the bottom of a pool, would you notice, I don't know anything about pool temp, would you notice if we had it at 29 degrees versus 28? I have no knowledge base on that.
Only the competitive swimmers would know.
Okay.
Well, they have these guys. These
Oh, right.
experts,
So I can speak to that. Your body temperature actually will notice between half a degree. I swam competitively for 10 years, and as Jessica mentioned, I do also work at the pool. So you do notice when the temperature fluctuates in minute degrees, but we make a really strong effort to keep it at that 28 degrees, mostly because of the Alberta Health Services, but also it's really tough to balance the chemicals when you get higher because people bring in various biological contaminants with them, even when they shower to get in the pool, and we need to make sure that our chemicals are at a good range for that. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anything else on recreation amenities, Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I travel to a lot of different pools around southern Alberta, and I make a habit of asking them what their pool temperature is at, actually. And so, funny enough, they all happen to be in this range of 28 degrees. But I can tell you from personal experience and from actually, of course, anecdotal experience hearing from other people that our pool is much colder than what other pools seem to be kept at. So I don't know how to kind of explain that one, how we all seem to keep our pools at the same temperatures, and yet ours is noticeably colder. I was also on the swim club, competitive swimming, for about 10 years as a child. I swam in pools much, much warmer than ours. And I can tell you that kids, adults, people are able to swim, and they do it all the time in much warmer water than what our pool is kept at. I'll have to see that ours is at 28 degrees, I guess, because as I mentioned, it seems to be a lot colder than that. And I guess the other thing to keep in mind as well is that it's all well and good to worry about the couple dozen people that might want the pool at a cooler temperature, while we're overlooking the hundreds or thousands of people in our town that would prefer a warmer temperature. And so that's where it's just going to come down to what are we trying to do here? Who are we serving? Are we actually trying to maximize the usage of our facilities, or are we trying to, I guess, make them appealing or usable to just a small fraction of the community? Personally, I don't like to see kids with blue lips. I don't like to see seniors getting in and shivering in the pool, just for the sake of keeping it cooler for a couple dozen people. I recognize there are other factors at play that were mentioned here, such as obviously keeping the pool healthy and not having excessive bacteria growth and things like that. So as I said, I pledge to bring this forward again for review. In the end, it's going to come down to what council wants to do as far as serving the public and who they're serving. It's been noticed. I didn't submit this question, even though I've brought this issue up a number of times. Obviously, people aren't imagining the pool being noticeably colder. And I travel around other pools, as I mentioned. I see other people from Strathmore, actually, a lot of times at other pools around southern Alberta. And I can tell you right now that our facility is losing out on a lot of revenue. We are subsidizing it more than we need to. which means that we're essentially wasting taxpayers' dollars by not kind of getting the amenity to a usable condition for the majority of people. And so for those reasons, I do believe it's worth changing the pool temperature, or at least looking at changing the pool temperature, and at least ensuring that we are kind of meeting that 28 degrees, if that's what we're going to say. Yeah, again, thank you very much for the question. I think it's a good one, and it's important that we do keep in mind the users of our facilities when we're making these decisions.
Thank you. I think we just have to be careful not to rely on anecdotal evidence and personal experience. If our staff and director are saying the pool temperature is 28 and AHS says 29 is the max, then I think we should just trust our staff that they are indeed keeping it at 28 degrees and that it's something that is allowable and recommended as far as lap pool swimming temperature. So I would just be cautious as far as that goes. I have great trust in our staff, our director, and I'm willing to, I mean, we can always discuss it at as a council for sure, but we have to trust our staff that the temperature is correct and that they are giving us accurate information. Funding requests, Councillor Montgomery.
Yeah, and just to respond to that, I don't think we should be ignoring the perspectives and opinions of the residents of Strathmore. You know, if they say that the pool is too cold, if the majority of people say the pool is too cold, it matters little what, you know, our staff say the temperature is or what, you know, other people might say the temperature is, if it's just too cold. And it's something that is said. I don't go to other pools and feel cold, first of all. And I don't go to other pools and hear from people about how cold the water is, whereas that does happen in Strathmore and has been happening in Strathmore consistently. So maybe at the very least, you know, the easiest thing to do would be to, I guess, confirm that our temperature is at 28 degrees using something besides whatever's been measuring it so far. And then I guess we could kind of go from there. The lady at the back there mentioned something about, you know, we can feel a ½ degree difference. There's been times I've gotten in the pool in Strathmore where the pool has not felt borderline icy, I'll call it, which means that there is obviously some sort of fluctuations in our pool temperature going on. And so we need to make sure that we are, you know, hitting that higher limit, if that's what we're going to do, if we're going to set a limit for ourselves like that. Let's make sure we're consistently, you know, at that higher limit. Otherwise, I mean, like as the lady mentioned, a ½ degree, you know, if it's down a ½ degree or a degree or a degree and a half, you know, that people really feel that. And it matters to people when they're using our facilities. As far as funding requests go, so the question is, I've seen some groups getting sponsorship money from the town. How is that decided? So for the past couple of years, we've had this process where we invite community delegations from various groups. These groups apply. We don't necessarily invite them, but they apply to the town to come and have their funding requests considered. And this year, council heard requests from 15 different community groups. And as far as like how the funds are allocated, council has a strategic plan that we came up with at the beginning of the term. That's essentially like a overarching guide to our actions over the coming term. And so those strategic priorities inform how we choose to, or what groups we choose to fund with the limited budget that we have. And so those groups come and apply and are heard out. And then at a later date, as we go through the budget process, that money is kind of allocated and then distributed after that. Thank you. Who's doing the FCS as well?
Denise doing FCS.
All right, you ready? Okay.
So this, there are lots of questions around the Family Community Support Services programming. We use the acronym FCSS. And the first one is, how does council prioritize community programs? And so FCSS prioritization follows the Alberta government's provincial priorities and is regulated by the Family and Community Support Services Act and Regulation. The town of Strathmore has entered into a cost-sharing agreement with the province, where the province pays 80% and the town pays 20% to carry out Family Community Support Services program. Within this funding, the town may deliver eligible, preventable social programs and services themselves, or they may provide grants to community agencies to deliver the programs and services. And so a second question says, why is FCSS planning so many cultural events and offering DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, that acronym is diversity, equity, and inclusion training, instead of putting resources into programs for seniors and families? So eligible programs and services under FCSS must be preventative and may include initiatives and programs that help communities identify their social needs and develop appropriate responses. It may promote, encourage, and support volunteer work in community. It may inform the public about services. It may support children and their families in social development. It may help families enrich and strengthen family life to be able to function more effectively in their own environment, or it may enhance retired and semi-retired people's quality of life. Ultimately, it is a responsibility of our municipality and the FCSS Advisory Board to determine whether or not to fund a specific service or project. So we do have a board that works with our Family Community Support Services to be able to look at what the needs of the community are. And they haven't just pulled that out of a hat. The needs have been determined by a needs assessment. Needs assessments are done regularly through the department so that there is an understanding of 360 perspective as good as we're able to do that. The another question in here is, and this follow-up to the last, that many people are struggling with the cost of living and benefit from certain community programs. Also, so around those, going back to those cultural programs, the town's cultural initiatives are funded through a very specific grant. It's called the SILP grant. That stands for Settlement, Integration, and Language Projects. The town was awarded the grant through the Strathmore Welcoming Initiative, which aimed to support employers and organizations and community members in welcoming, settling, and retaining newcomers. And the implementation included the development of a sustainable newcomer resource, a resource hub, to specialized diversity and inclusion training, resources to aid integration, community connection and programming, cultural events, and cultural awareness campaign. So those all fit into our general strategic plan under community wellness, because Strathmore is a growing community, and though our growth has not been huge, we are like every other community where we're getting lots of newcomers and we need them. So Strathmore has had people come before council to say, our entry-level employment processes are suffering because we can't find people to hire in your community. And what can you do to help us encourage, sustainable employment in our food sectors and in our motels and hotel sectors when we cannot find people to work and it's very, very difficult to maintain our business presence. And so this grant has gone a long way to informing what we need to do in order to make that happen. So how can we work together with those employers to find affordable housing, to make sure that these people have a good experience in our community, that they have the supports that they need. So it's that, and I would say that in this FCSS department, under this town's leadership, everything that I have seen them do is very much geared to focusing on the strategic plan, where it's a hand up and not a handout. And I think that we could say that it has proven to be very effective, and I believe that with this grant implementation, it will become even more effective. So we are the whole cultural and community awareness has been great. The last question in this section is, what is the town doing to combat the increase of homelessness and the safety concerns with encampment being so close to trails and parks? I no longer feel comfortable taking my children to Kinsman because of it, and that's not fair to my family. So homelessness and safety concerns, the town has continued to support the Strathmore Overnight Shelter. And so 6 years ago, Pastor Elizabeth Karp and the Harvest Healing Center in town determined to build a homeless shelter. There were 2 deaths on the highway that sparked that need, and so they built a shelter that will accommodate up to 20 people, more if the fire services determine that it's necessary, and that shelter was built on volunteerism. So no money was asked for from the taxpayers, and small amounts were given by the town at the front end to help them with a few things, but it was in the $30,000 to $50,000 range. I can't remember exactly in that 2013 council term. And so they do work very, very closely with our local constabulary and with the RCMP to try to make sure that safe places are available for everyone. And the shelter is just in the process of, part of the problem was that it's an overnight shelter. So those people who are accessing that shelter are accessing the library and Prospect Community Services during the day, and you see them in the town with nowhere to go. But the shelter is transitioning to a 24-hour facility with help again from Hope Mission, and so that will mitigate a lot of those problems. And I don't know about homelessness in our parks. I honestly, I live very close to Kinsman Park in the downtown south. I walk in Kinsman Park a couple times a day, and I have seen people occasionally sleeping in the ballpark. That's me. Stop it, Mayor Fuel. I wish you wouldn't do that. And I have the odd time seen people in a sleeping bag, in the gazebos here. And, if you have opportunity, I've said to people, did you know there was an overnight shelter? And very often there are people that are hitchhiking on the highway, and they are just looking for a place to crash for the night. And if they know that there's a shelter, they generally go there. But I think that this community, and I admit that I have a bias. I volunteered for the overnight shelter for several years. I think that this community does an absolutely incredible job compared to other communities in dealing with homelessness. And we always think that in a small town, in a warm community, that homeless will not be our issue. But I can tell you that the majority of the people that are in our shelter are from the local geographic area. So in that 35,000 people, and occasionally we do get people from Calgary, particularly seniors that are incredibly vulnerable and homeless, and the homelessness agencies in Calgary will ask us to take them, and they work with us to help find housing. But more often than not, the Calgary organizations take our people. And so there's more flow that way than there is this way. And so I think Strathmore has done a remarkable job, and the town has bent over backwards to provide supports to the overnight shelter and to the homeless population through the supports from the Family Community Support Services. So lots of times it's seniors who didn't know how to do the paperwork in order to get the benefits from their deceased spouse, and they no longer were able to maintain their home. And so our FCSS will do all that paperwork, and they'll help find them temporary shelter. They'll work with the shelter here. They'll help with the good food boxes and finding them food resources, and help them get all their identifications and personal identifications so that they can get their lives back on track, and provide transportation to services. So the town has done those under those imperatives that we talked about under the FCSS. They are putting that to very, very good use to help the most vulnerable of our community. And so the town, in those services that are utilizing that provincial grant, it has gone to very, very good purpose. And the other thing, our municipal enforcement, along with the RCMP, work extremely closely with the overnight shelter to make sure that people are kept safe. So the RCMP will, if they find people, they'll bring them to the shelter. We have good connections with other agencies that will take people home if that's the problem, if that's what they're needing. And so the town has provided in-kind services to a tremendously high level, and they've done it with very, very little money. So I'm extremely grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think that brings us to a conclusion of our November's Coffee with Council. To those people who are watching at home, we apologize that there was a disruption in the streaming, but we're really glad you could join us. And to those people in the gallery who had suggestions and questions, our director will be reaching out to you, and we'll be looking at those situations. And we will be starting our council and administration and staff budget work next week. And we will be continuing to work to make the property tax rate as manageable as possible, as reasonable as possible. And I look forward to working with Liana and her team, and Kara, your folks, Kevin. So thank you for being with us on this November 12th. If I don't see some of you again for a while, Merry Christmas. And to those at home, best wishes for your Christmas season. Take care.